I used to think fall meant hiding my hair under hats until spring came back around. Nobody tells you that the right cut and color at this time of year can do more for how young you look than any cream in your bathroom cabinet. This season, four specific trends are quietly changing how women over 50 are being seen at the grocery store, at church, at their own daughter's birthday dinner. I've watched women walk into salons feeling invisible and walk out looking like someone stopped to really see them for the first time. I researched the best hair trends and the mistakes that age women over 50 so you get real answers, not guesswork. If you haven't already, hit subscribe, because I cover this every single week. Part 1. The warm root melt that's replacing flat gray coverage. Here's something your colorist probably hasn't said out loud. Solid gray coverage is what's been aging you, not the gray itself. Flat, single-tone color sits on the hair like a helmet, and under falls warmer indoor lighting. It reads harder and more artificial than it ever did in summer sun. Colette found this out by accident. She'd been getting the same all-over color for 11 years, convinced it was the safe choice, the low-maintenance choice. Then her stylist retired and the new one looked at her roots growing in and said something that stopped her cold. You've been fighting your own face shape this whole time. The warm root melt is the fix, and it works because it does something flat color never can. Instead of one uniform shade from root to tip, your colorist blends a warmer, richer tone at the root that gradually lightens toward the ends. This isn't highlights. This isn't balayage in the trendy, beachy sense. It's a controlled gradient that mimics the way hair naturally softens and catches light as it grows out, which is exactly the visual cue our eyes read as youthful, because it's what naturally occurring hair color actually does at every age, just muted with time. When you ask for it at the salon, say this exactly. I want a root melt 2 shades warmer than my base, blended low so there's no visible line, with the mid-lengths and ends kept lighter to catch the light. That phrasing tells your colorist precisely where the warmth starts and how far it travels, so you don't end up with a stripe of color sitting awkwardly at your part. Here's the part that surprises people. This isn't about looking less gray. Colette kept plenty of her natural silver. What changed was how the color moved. Under the salon's overhead lights, her new root melt caught warmth exactly where her face needed lift, right along the hairline and temples, softening the shadow that flat color used to throw across her forehead. She told me she stood up from the chair, caught her reflection in the big mirror by the door, and for a second didn't recognize the woman looking back. Not because she looked like someone else, because she looked like herself again, the version she remembered from photos in her 40s. What this fix actually changes is how people read your energy before you say a single word. A flat, cool-toned color under artificial light can make the whole face look tired, even flat-lit, no matter how well-rested you actually are. The warm root melt does the opposite. It puts warmth exactly where your face catches light first, so people register glowing before they register gray or not gray. That's the whole trick. It's not about erasing your natural color. It's about directing where the eye lands first. The maintenance is gentler than people expect too, which is the detail that finally convinced Colette to commit. Because the melt is designed to grow out softly rather than in a hard line, she's stretching her salon visits to every 10 to 12 weeks instead of the 6 weeks flat color demanded. Her stylist explained it plainly. A root melt is built to look intentional even mid-grow out, so there's no panicked appointment the moment a quarter inch of new growth shows. Before, Colette's hair was one flat, cool tone from root to tip, the kind of color that photographs harshly under any indoor light. After, it's a warm, dimensional melt that softens her whole face and stretches for months without looking neglected. And that shift from flat to dimensional is really the whole story of fall hair this year, because the next trend takes that same warmth and moves it somewhere you'd never expect to find it working this hard for you. Part 2. Why your fringe might be the missing decade. Most women over 50 think a fringe is either too young for them or too much upkeep to bother with, and both of those beliefs are quietly costing them years off how they're perceived. The truth your stylist rarely says plainly is that a fringe isn't about age at all. It's about camouflage in exactly the right place, because a well-placed fringe softens the upper forehead, breaks up horizontal lines at the brow, and reshapes how the whole face reads in a single glance, before anyone even registers your color or your cut length. Marguerite avoided fringes for 15 years because her one attempt in her 30s left her with a stiff, blunt line that she hated maintaining. What nobody told her back then is that false fringe trend isn't that fringe at all. This season's version is a soft curtain fringe, longer, side-swept, with pieces that graze past the temples rather than sitting in a hard line across the forehead. It's grown out on purpose. The exact phrase to bring to your stylist is this: I want a curtain fringe that starts further back at the crown, with the longest pieces framing my cheekbones, not a blunt line across my forehead. That single sentence prevents the number one fringe mistake, which is a stylist cutting it too short and too straight, because that's the default most clients ask for without specifying otherwise. The mechanism behind why this works is simple once you see it. As we age, the forehead often shows more visible horizontal movement than any other part of the face, and it's usually the very first thing people's eyes land on in conversation, even if they'd never say so. A soft curtain fringe interrupts that sight line immediately. Instead of a flat, open forehead being the first thing registered, the eye catches movement, texture, and framing around the temples and cheekbones instead. It's the same principle stylists use with face framing layers, just brought higher up and closer to the eyes, where it does even more work. Marguerite's snapback moment happened 3 days after her appointment, not in the salon but at her grandson's soccer game. Another grandmother she barely knew leaned over and asked where she'd had her hair done, saying it made her whole face look lifted, somehow, but natural. Marguerite hadn't touched anything else. Same glasses, same makeup routine she'd used for a decade. The only change was those soft pieces framing her temples. She told me later that comment stuck with her all week, not because of the compliment itself, but because a stranger had noticed something specific enough to ask about it, which almost never happens once you pass 60. The upkeep myth is the other barrier worth clearing up directly. A soft curtain fringe, unlike a blunt one, doesn't require trims every 3 weeks to hold its shape. Because it's cut with movement and length built in, it can go 6 to 8 weeks between trims and still look intentional the entire time, growing into the face rather than out of shape. That alone makes it one of the lowest maintenance high-impact changes on this whole list. Before, Marguerite's forehead sat fully exposed, drawing every glance straight to the lines she'd spent years trying to soften with concealer alone. After, soft pieces frame her temples and cheekbones, and the forehead is simply no longer the first thing anyone's eye catches. If a fringe felt like the boldest trend on this list, brace yourself, because the next one is quieter, and almost nobody talks about it, which is exactly why it works so well. Part 3. The blowout texture nobody's talking about yet. Everyone's still obsessing over cut and color, and almost nobody is talking about the one thing that quietly undoes both if you get it wrong: texture. Diane came to me with a fresh cut and a beautiful new color, done just 2 weeks earlier, and she was still asking why she didn't feel like the after photo her stylist had shown her in the mirror that day. The cut was right. The color was right. What she didn't realize is that she'd gone right back to blow-drying it completely smooth and straight, the same way she had for 30 years, which flattened every bit of dimension her new color was designed to show off. This fall's texture trend is the soft, tousled blowout, sometimes called a second-day wave, and it's built specifically to work with dimensional color instead of erasing it. Rather than pulling hair bone straight with a round brush, the technique uses a loose, diffused finish that leaves gentle bend and movement through the mid-lengths and ends. The exact request to bring to your stylist or to recreate at home is this: diffuse dry with your fingers instead of a brush, and leave the ends slightly undone rather than smooth flat. That one adjustment changes everything about how light moves through the hair afterward. The reason this matters so much for women over 50 specifically comes down to how flat, glass straight hair interacts with facial volume as we age. Perfectly straight hair, especially chin length or longer, tends to pull the whole face downward visually, adding weight exactly where most of us are already fighting gravity. Soft texture does the opposite. It creates lift and movement near the crown and adds visual volume through the mid-lengths, which lifts the entire silhouette of the face upward instead of down. It's not more hair. It's hair that moves like it has more life in it, and that reads as younger before a single detail is consciously noticed. Diane's turning point came at her own kitchen table, of all places. Her daughter, a notoriously blunt critic of anything she considered trying too hard, looked up from her coffee one morning and said, "Wait, did you do something different? You look rested." Diane hadn't slept any better that week. She'd simply stopped reaching for the round brush and let her hair air dry halfway before finishing with a diffuser. Fingers instead of bristles working through the ends. The compliment landed harder because it came from someone who almost never offered one unprompted. There's a real result here worth naming plainly. Soft texture doesn't just change how your hair looks. It changes how rested and approachable your whole face reads to other people, because tension in perfectly smooth hair can unconsciously register as tension in the face itself. Loosen the hair, and the whole expression seems to loosen right along with it, even when nothing about your actual expression has changed. Before, Diane's hair was pinned straight and flat against her face, no matter how good the cut or color underneath it was. After, soft waves lift through the crown and move gently at the ends, letting her color actually do the job it was cut and colored to do. And once you've seen how much texture alone can shift, the final trend on this list might be the simplest to adopt of all four, and possibly the one most women skip by accident. Part 4. The length everyone's cutting into but nobody's naming. There's a length showing up in salons across the country right now that doesn't have a catchy name yet, which is exactly why almost nobody's talking about it, even though stylists are quietly recommending it to nearly every client over 55. It sits just below the collarbone, not quite shoulder length, not quite long, and it's replacing both the safe bob and the let it grow forever instinct that a lot of women fall into without ever really deciding to. Rosalind had been growing her hair out for almost 3 years with no real plan behind it, just a vague sense that shorter hair felt like giving something up. When her stylist finally sat her down and asked what she actually wanted her hair to do for her, Rosalind didn't have an answer. That question is the whole reason this length works so well for women over 50. It's not a dramatic cut, and it's not a dramatic grow out either. It's a deliberate stopping point that gives length enough weight to move properly, while staying short enough to avoid the thin, stringy look that overly long hair often falls into once natural volume starts to soften with age. The phrase to bring to your stylist is specific. Cut it to just below the collarbone, with enough long layers through the ends to keep weight and movement, not just length. That distinction between length and weight is the part most women miss when they ask generally for a trim, instead of a real length decision. Hair that's simply long, with no shaping, tends to hang flat and pull the whole face down. Hair cut to this collarbone-adjacent length, with layers built specifically for movement, does the opposite. It swings, it catches light, and it frames the jawline instead of dragging past it into nothing. Rosalind's snapback moment happened at her sister's house, where she hadn't seen her extended family in almost a year. Her aunt, who has never once held back an honest opinion, took one look at her walking through the door and said, "You finally cut it. Good. It looks like you again. Not younger. Not different. Like you again," which Rosalind said hit harder than any compliment about looking younger ever could have, because it meant the length had stopped fighting her face and started working with it. What makes this length so quietly powerful is how little it demands in return. It's long enough to pull back for practical days, short enough to style in under 10 minutes with the texture technique from earlier in this video, and structured enough that it never looks like it's simply growing out, without direction. It's the length version of having an actual plan, instead of drifting toward whatever happens by default. Before, Rosalind's hair hung past her shoulders with no real shape, heavy without any real movement, drifting rather than styled. After, it sits at a deliberate collarbone-adjacent length with layers built for motion, framing her jaw instead of weighing past it. All four of these trends work the same way underneath the surface. Not by hiding anything about your age, but by directing exactly where the eye lands first. And for most women, that one shift changes more than any product ever could. You now know exactly what's changing in salons this fall, from a warm root melt that redirects light off your face, to a soft curtain fringe that reframes your forehead, to texture that lifts instead of flattens, to a length built for movement instead of drift. None of it requires starting over. It just requires asking for the right thing by name. Which one of these four are you trying first? The root melt, the fringe, the texture, or the length? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Next week I'm breaking down the exact at-home tools that make that soft blowout texture last past day one, so you're not back to flat by lunchtime. Like this video, subscribe to Timeless Wisdom Path, and I'll see you in the next one.